PCN Pharmacy 1 month later after the hype. Let's talk. Hi everyone, if you are new here, my name is Osama. I'm a pharmacist working in England. Welcome to the channel. So about a month ago I made a video, it was a 1 week later video discussing my initial thoughts and impressions after switching from community pharmacy to the PCN pharmacy. So now I've been in the job 5-6 weeks or so. I thought I'd make a 1 month later video where I could more accurately gauge my thoughts and feelings about the switch from one pharmacy sector to another. So I'm going to divide the video into 6 different sections discussing my various thoughts and conclusions that I've come across within this initial 1 month period. So let's start talking about them. So point number 1, and I suppose my initial upfront conclusion, is community pharmacy is very much a supply-based sector, whereas the PCN pharmacy is very much a clinical-based sector. Yeah, it's the two sectors are very different beasts, to be honest with you. I remember when I was in community pharmacy, sometimes it felt like it had become the sweatshop of the healthcare world, or even the Amazon of the healthcare world, where all you were doing was constantly checking baskets, and it was quite repetitive, really. This PCN clinical pharmacy, it's a completely different beast, to be honest with you. It's much more sort of complicated, much more multi-layered, much deeper. If there were board games, both sectors, community pharmacy would be a game of drafts and the PCN pharmacy would be like a game of chess, just completely two different beasts. I think the community pharmacy, it's very much a binary sort of thing where it's just very much a simple supply sort of role that you play with a little bit of clinical sprinkled on top. The PCN pharmacy is completely different to that. You have to know about your, obviously, mechanism of action of drugs, your pharmacokinetics, your pharmacology, your interactions. You have to learn how to interpret blood results, renal results, all sorts of things like that. So it's, like I say, it's a very multifaceted, multi-layered, and ultimately I would say more satisfying sort of role than the simple binary function of community pharmacy. So point number 2, I suppose, is about the difference in the hours worked between both sectors. So my official hours in community pharmacy was Monday to Friday 9 till 6 and one Saturday a month. But to be honest with you, because I got to the pharmacy quite early, unofficially really I was doing closer to 50 hours a week, and you could add that up to almost 55 hours a week when it was my Saturday to work. So in this current job, the hours are 37.5 hours, which sounds good on paper, but don't let that fool you. The hours are shorter, but I would say, I think especially in these early days, they are more intense because I still have these sort of little gaps in my clinical knowledge. I need to really rapidly upskill myself. So I'd say, yeah, shorter hours, but those hours are more intense. Point number 3, no more management. So when I was in community, I was a manager, and I would say I was a natural manager. It's something I did enjoy doing at the time. But I'd been doing it for, at that stage, almost 21, almost 22 years, really. And, having to open the shop up, lock the shop, manage the staff, obviously hit your targets, your KPIs, this, that, and the other, I've been there, done that, and I was getting a little bit fed up of it. So one good thing about switching sectors into the clinical pharmacy arena is that really, for the moment anyway, there is actually no management what to do, and I have to say that is really refreshing. The only thing I have to manage is myself. Number 4, beware of the learning curve. So in PCN clinical pharmacy, I would say there is a steep learning curve, make no mistake about that, especially if you've sort of spent all your life in community pharmacy. Now don't get me wrong, I did my clinical diploma in community pharmacy in 2006, and I did my independent prescribing in 2017. And despite that, and despite all my years of experience in community pharmacy, I was still finding huge gaps in my clinical knowledge going into this new role. But I expected that, and that's also one of the reasons why you have to undergo a lot of training. For example, the CPP 18-month pathway seems to be a great sort of complement to starting this new role. So as well as learning the clinical sort of things that you need in this sort of new role, I obviously had to learn how to use the new software like EMIS Web. And I have to say, I think it took me probably 5 weeks from starting to sort of be quite confident in how to use it. So it's not too bad really. It's just like anything else, you just need to practice and learn. But yeah, definitely be aware of the learning curve in general when moving from community pharmacy to PCN pharmacy, especially in the early days. It can it's quite a lot to learn, to be honest with you. Number 5. Well, the only way I can describe number 5 is the funding differential. So again, anyone who's familiar with community pharmacy will know only too full well that year after year we've been given pretty crappy contracts from the government, really sort of below inflation contracts from the global sum, and it's quite difficult really to sort of for pharmacy to realise its full potential when you're getting sort of inadequate funding. I know this is a common complaint in a lot of sort of jobs and sectors in healthcare, but it was particularly true in community pharmacy. So you compare that to the PCN, clinical pharmacy, it's a completely different kettle of fish. The government are literally throwing money at the PCNs. PCNs are the new currency of the NHS. If you look, for example, the CPP pathway that I mentioned earlier, that's a £5,000 cost per head that the government's paying for, as well as the laptop that we got from the PCN and the mobile phone to be able to work remotely. So there's a hell of a lot of money going into these PCNs, and I think sometimes you've got to, as cynical as it sounds, you have to follow the money, and you have to sort of just go where the friction is least. It's sort of community pharmacy, you always feel like you're going against the grain. The government are never giving you enough funding to sort of realise a lot of the sort of dreams that we had in community pharmacy. So yeah, the funding differential, it's stark, and it's a big contrast really between the two sectors. I sort of feel like with the funding that they are putting to the PCN, that us as pharmacists, we can really make a big impact in sort of the healthcare landscape beyond just the simple binary function of supplying drugs. Number 6, final thoughts, right? So what can I say 1 month later in total? Well, I think definitely yes, it has been worth the move, I would say. After 22 years in community, I think I had enough, and I wanted something more than what I was being sort of offered in community pharmacy. To be honest with you, it wasn't even a money thing, it was just, it's a professional fulfillment thing, and I think a lot of you will know what I mean when I mention that. I think the term clinical pharmacist, I think it is a deserved term. I know a lot of my colleagues in community get a bit pissed off when they hear the phrase clinical pharmacist. They think that we're all pharmacists, we're all clinical, and yes, that is 100% true. But I'm sorry to say, the pharmacists, especially the ones that I've shadowed in the PCN, they well and truly deserve the title clinical pharmacist, because their knowledge of clinical systems and just clinical things in general is way above anything that your average Joe Bloggs community pharmacist can do. I think the more I do this clinical pharmacy and the more time I spend in it, the harder and harder it is to go back to community pharmacy. I think once you've had a taste of it, and you're sort of that way inclined to do the sort of clinical work, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. Don't get me wrong, it's not an easy switch, it's not an easy life. You know, people thinking, oh, I'm just going to go to the PCN Pharmacy for an easy life. That's certainly not the case. You know, it is hard work in its own right, even though the hours might be shorter. So that's just something to bear in mind. But I think one last thing that I will say to you all, and one thing to bear in mind, is that if you look at any sort of sector of the economy, the progress or the cutting edge stuff is always done at the margins of that profession or that sector. And I would say that the PCN clinical pharmacy is at the cutting edge of the profession, and that's where sort of a lot of the progress is being made. It's not to say progress isn't being made at community pharmacy, but there's not much more that can be done in community pharmacy that's not already being done. If you want to sort of be at the cutting edge, at the forefront of things, in my opinion, I think it's in the PCN sector. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think. Thanks very much for watching. It's been great letting you know my 1 month later thoughts. So hopefully I'm going to do a 6 month later video where again I'll be able to reflect more, you know, in a different way to what I've done now. So anyway, thanks again for watching. See you soon. Thanks again. Bye.